Let's now discuss the wind turbine controller and some accessory components you may or may not find in the nacelle. I say may or may not because different wind turbine manufacturers might position these elements in different locations in different wind turbine designs and may offer variations dependent upon application. For example, a wind turbine intended for offshore installations might mount pretty much everything in the nacelle in an effort to protect these components from exposure to seawater at the base, whereas a turbine intended for installation on land might have some elements of the power conditioning equipment in the nacelle and some of it in the down tower assembly. Depending upon manufacturer, model, and date of installation, a wind turbine controller may be implemented using simple hardwired relay-based ladder logic or a more sophisticated programmable logic controller, or PLC. Additionally, you may encounter implementations that are a little bit of both, with a PLC managing certain aspects of the wind turbine and smaller subsystems implemented entirely in relay-based ladder logic, or vice versa. Depending upon construction, the controller takes inputs from various sensors and switches, evaluates these inputs, and issues outputs to actuators like motors and brakes. The evaluation of inputs might be real electromechanical contacts wired together, or they may be programmed instructions inside a PLC. Depending upon the model and date of manufacture, interacting with the controller can at times be an all-consuming affair of digging through sheets of schematics and tracing individual wires, plugging in some accessory interface device with limited functionality, networking a laptop with a PLC, or sufficiently modern, using a human-machine interface or HMI screen to do so. As a very basic example of an isolated element inside a controller, consider a simplified representation of a hydraulic system warning indicator, consisting of a parallel configuration of a normally open oil over temperature switch, a normally open over pressure switch, and a normally closed float switch being held open by a quantity of oil in the reservoir, being used to energize the coil of a relay designated as hydraulic problem. If the temperature of the oil in the reservoir exceeds the set value of the temperature switch, the normally open temperature switch in rung 1 closes and energizes the coil of the hydraulic problem relay. Similarly, if the pressure in the hydraulic system exceeds the set value of the pressure switch, the normally open pressure switch in rung 2 closes and energizes the coil of the hydraulic problem relay. Finally, if the oil in the reservoir ever falls below the reset value of the float switch, the normally closed float switch being held open recloses and energizes the coil of the hydraulic problem relay. Wired in this parallel fashion, any one of these trouble conditions in isolation or any combination of these trouble conditions acting simultaneously can energize the hydraulic problem relay. Alternatively, a series wired safety chain could prevent the startup of some task until all necessary conditions in the safety chain have been checked and verified. If check 1, 2, and 4 are good, but check 3 is bad, the system will not run until check 3 is resolved. Various combinations of series and parallel inputs, as well as comparisons, loops, and other operations form the basic structure of a wind turbine controller. As I mentioned previously, the physical location of the controller is somewhat difficult to pin down, since the sensors monitoring wind speed and direction, blade angle, yaw direction, oil temperature, rotational speed, and every other aspect of the turbine performance can be rightly considered input elements of the controller, and they're spread all over the turbine at various points of use. However, logical elements of the controller, being the PLC and/or the hardwired relay-based ladder logic implementations, are most likely found in an electrical cabinet within the nacelle or in the down tower assembly. In this same cabinet, one can most likely find the circuit breakers, fuses, contactors, and overloads necessary to stop, start, protect, and modify the operating characteristics of actuators like motors under the direction of the controller. The Motor Control playlist, available at the Big Bad Tech channel, deals extensively with these devices and their applications. Depending upon the sophistication level of the controller, it may or may not have certain condition monitoring and diagnostic or troubleshooting utilities. Condition monitoring might be as basic as an indication of which contactors or relay coils are energized or not, or as sophisticated as real-time and historical records of temperature, pressure, oil particle counts, voltage and current values, as well as wind speed, wind direction, yaw and pitch positions, and more. The controller may also be able to show present and historical logs of trouble codes, showing the date and time of a particular error, as well as an indication of its severity. For example, if a battery and electrical pitch system UPS experiences low voltage, this error might halt production until a technician can inspect, repair, and return the turbine to service. By checking the error log, a technician would know which particular UPS to inspect, as well as the time of the error. Even more sophisticated controllers can offer strip recorders, which continuously monitor and record and can generate graphical representations of specific properties as a function of time. For example, upon receipt of a motor protection error, i.e. an overload, a technician might be able to generate a plot of current around the time of the incident to determine the magnitude and duration of the overcurrent event. A technician might even be able to look back and see if this is a one-time event or something that occurs with increasing frequency, which might indicate a mechanical problem like a misalignment or bearing issue or lack of lubrication. During the course of maintenance or service, a technician may need to override the turbine controller to pitch a certain blade back or forward, yaw the nacelle to a specific direction, turn a pump on or off, check the status or value of certain conditions or other actions. Realize a technician must have full understanding of the perhaps dangerous consequences of every single one of their override actions when taking manual control of a turbine, because certain safety checks ordinarily performed by the automated system might be bypassed when overridden. For example, manually pitching the blades and releasing the rotor lock while you're still inside the hub might not be the wisest course of action. Before we go down tower, it's perhaps worth a moment of time to examine those components necessary to bring equipment up, notably material handling equipment like hoists, cranes, and gantries. Since not everything you need in a nacelle fits in a technician's pocket, a wind turbine often incorporates a motor-driven chain hoist to haul equipment beyond a certain size from the ground into the nacelle. Depending upon design, a turbine might mount the hoist on the yaw deck, which is the deck just below the nacelle, or the crane arm extending out the side of an open roof hatch, or through a trapdoor in the floor of the nacelle. Still other designs use a portable motor-driven chain hoist and an accessory arm that can be mounted at various locations, for example the nose cone of the hub. As turbine size has increased considerably over the years, a number of manufacturers utilize overhead gantries that slide the length of the nacelle to facilitate the removal and installation of increasingly heavier yaw motors, accessory gearboxes, oil pumps, heat exchangers, and other components. Down the tower we go. Older turbines utilize open lattice structure towers, similar to a transmission tower. However, modern industrial wind turbines use a steel monopole structure that consists of 3 or more can-like structures bolted one on top of each other. As turbines have gotten larger and taller, some manufacturers are utilizing interlocking concrete sections that form the bottom section of the tower. A technician reaches the nacelle by attaching themselves to a safety line and climbing up a ladder, often oriented so their back is against the tower wall. Within each tower section, there exist a number of decks that act as midway rest stations and afford inspection opportunities for the bolts securing each section together. Since wind turbine towers are dynamically moving entities, regular inspection of these critical fasteners is essential to ensure the long life and safety of the turbine. These fasteners are of a size and torque beyond what's capable of being exerted manually. For this reason, technicians must regularly make use of special purpose devices like a hydraulic or electric torque wrench to do so. After being torqued to a specification, witness marks placed on the fasteners can register any shift in their position. These fasteners are regularly inspected and tested on a periodic basis. The down tower assembly of a particular turbine varies from manufacturer to manufacturer and model to model. Oftentimes, elements of the controller, as well as additional motor control elements like circuit breakers, contactors, and overloads, can be found inside an electrical cabinet, as well as primitive or not so primitive means of interacting with the wind turbine controller and its associated subsystems. The down tower section may also include power electronics devices like converters used to condition the outgoing power and their accessory cooling devices, as well as switchgear necessary to connect and disconnect the generator to the grid. Importantly, the down tower assembly houses 2 transformers, one incoming and another outgoing. For example, a particular turbine might take incoming 480 volt 3-phase AC and use 3 windings, one with a 1-to-1 turn ratio to power the 3-phase AC chain hoists, another winding with a 1 to 2.3 step down ratio to power a couple 208 volt 3-phase AC pumps, and a single winding with a 1 to 4 step down ratio to power a single phase 120 volt lights and outlets. The outgoing transformer, in contrast, is used to step up the output of the generator to a voltage more suitable for transmission to the collector substation. Depending upon the particular model, this larger outgoing transformer might be mounted outside of the turbine on a concrete pad, hence the name pad mount transformer, or inside the basement level of the down tower assembly, affectionately known as the snake pit. Ask me why it's called the snake pit. Still, other turbines, especially those intended for marine applications, actually mount the transformers up in the nacelle to save them exposure to salt water. Regardless of the mounting location, realize these transformers are sophisticated, i.e. expensive devices that require regular maintenance and inspection, and often utilize liquid coolants like oil to keep them operating at top efficiency. All right, I believe we are just about done with our quick tour of a modern industrial wind turbine. One might think we got it covered tip to base, but why stop there? Let's go outside the turbine and consider the larger wind farm and those elements commonly found within wind farms. Wind farms are collections of collectively managed wind turbines. A typical wind farm in the U.S. might include from a low of a couple turbines to more than 1,000. Depending on topography and road access, you might see them installed in strings of maybe a dozen or more. A technician might be dispatched to turbine B3, which would be the third turbine in the B string. Interspersed within a wind farm, you might find a couple metrology towers or MET towers with wind vanes, anemometers, rain gauges, and additional weather measurement instruments. A wind farm may also include one or more collector substations, which, as the name implies, collects the outputs of several wind turbines and steps up the voltage again to a level suitable for transmission. Finally, a wind farm will have one or more operations and maintenance buildings, which house the tools, parts, special equipment, trucks, and people that, as the name implies, operate and maintain the wind farm. Finally, a wind farm will include a SCADA system, SCADA, which stands for Supervisory, Control, and Data Acquisition. The SCADA system connects the individual turbines, substation, and MET towers to a central computer via fiber optic communication network, which allows the operators to monitor and control the behavior of individual wind turbines and the wind farm as a whole. The SCADA system records instantaneous power output, turbine availability, operating conditions, and error signals, and can respond to instructions from network operators to control reactive power production, contribute to network voltage or frequency control, or to limit or increase power output. The SCADA system keeps a historical record of activity and allows operators to determine what corrective action, if any, needs to be taken in the event of a fault condition. Those turbines deemed worthy of further inspection will have a team of troubleshooting technicians dispatched to them with a general idea of what to expect upon arrival. Given wind is an intermittent variable renewable resource, you may see battery energy storage facilities at the wind farm of the future. All right, I do believe we are done with this topic, as we've discussed most of the major components of modern industrial wind turbines on an introductory level. In conclusion, this lecture examined modern industrial wind turbine generators. We discussed the rotor, consisting of the blades and hub, the pitching mechanisms and backup power systems found in the hub, elements found in the wind station on top of the nacelle, those components in the nacelle, including the main shaft, gearbox, high-speed shaft, coupling, generator, controller, and parking brake, the tower and load handling equipment, as well as the accessory electrical components in the down tower assembly. We additionally briefly discussed elements commonly found in wind farms, like MET towers, collector substations, operations and maintenance facilities, SCADA systems, and who knows, maybe even battery energy storage. Remember to review these concepts as often as you need to really drive it home. Imagine how well lab will go if you know what you're doing.